In Sri Lanka, it looks like old mayhem has broken out. The president appears to have resigned. This is in response to massive protests in the country. And this is from people just protesting against the fact that they don't have enough food to eat. And this is in a country that it's renowned for growing an abundance of rice and vegetables. But this has been really hamstrung by a recent ban on chemical fertilizers.
Yes, that's right, Brendan. And if recent developments continue to unfold in Western Europe and the United States as they have over the last couple of months, we may see similar crises here sooner rather than later. Let's look at some details right now.
I'm Brendan Fallon.
And I'm Lee Smith.
And we're over the target. So Lee, you mentioned Europe just then, and in the Netherlands specifically, we've got a similar situation with 40,000 protesters protesting the government restrictions on linked to trying to cut down apparently emissions of nitrogen and ammonia. So this already seems to be rearing its head in Europe as well.
Yeah, these are some of the issues that the entire world is facing. And when we talk about issues like globalism or the New World Order, we're looking at who some of the targets are. And these are farmers. Why? Because of the centrality of food to human beings. So the idea that in Sri Lanka, there's the issue of food, and in the Netherlands, there's the issue of food as well. This is very, very important. And they're going after farmers for a number of different reasons, not just because they produce food, but also remember, farmers are historically, I wouldn't say self-sufficient, but a very, very important part of any society, right? These are the people who actually make things. These are not people who are in the service economy, but people who actually grow things and get them to market. That's why they're a very important sector of the economy, so to go after them is a big deal.
Right, yeah, this is a fundamental thing. If everything else collapses, if you don't get food, you don't survive. I was just reading some personal account of one farmer in the Netherlands who's had a farm it's been in his family for 5 generations, something like 200 years. And it's obviously, this is something the family has taken pride in. It's something they've carried through the generations. And he's saying he's not gonna encourage his children to follow this tradition. He wouldn't expect that off them under these circumstances. It's too stressful, too much.
Yeah, well, historically, I mean, that farmers often do that. They don't encourage their children to do that hard work, but kids who are raised on a farm, they often revere the tradition, the family history, and they like the work, right? That's who does it. This is not easy work, people who farm, right? So lots of farmer parents do not encourage their children to go into the business, but the children nonetheless love it. And they do it anyway because they realize how important it is. And so again, for the leaders of any society to be going after farmers, saying we're going to take your land, and that's really what's behind it here. The idea of the government appropriating land, that's a very big deal. To go after this sector of society, this is significant.
One comment I saw, this was from a man named Bjorn Lomborg. He's the president of the Copenhagen Consensus. He was accounting for this situation as a case of politicians making promises, and it's standard for politicians to make promises that they can't keep. But what's happened is that they've been sued, so they're put in a situation where they have to go through in these promises about meeting these quota and reducing carbon emissions and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have to admit right now, and we have to, I don't know, how did they say it in the 60s and 70s? Speak truth to power. So that's what we're going to do now on Over the Target. We're speaking truth to power. The climate change agenda, it's about power. It's about transferring resources from one part of society to the elites. That's what the climate change agenda is about, right? How do we know? Because who's not part of the Paris Accords, right? Barack Obama owns 2 enormous pieces of oceanfront property, right? So let's look at reality. The people who are pushing this agenda, aside from some of the dingbats like AOC, the people who are really in charge and who are pushing this agenda know what it's about. It's about acquiring power. It's about setting certain regulations so that they can take land, money, and other resources from people and hold it for themselves.
The motivations are really coming into question here. If you look at what's happening on a global scale, For one, I mean, the timing of this, we're still in the grips of the pandemic that's dealt such a severe economic blow to the economies of the world. So you'd think that you'd kind of give the world a break. You'd give these economies a break, give these industries a break at this time so that they can kind of recover from that. But they seem to be pushing it harder than ever. It's almost like they're trying to break the system, trying to break these industries.
We see how they regarded the pandemic, right, as an opportunity. This is an opportunity for the Great Reset. So these people take advantage of, tragically, they take advantage of the human condition when things are hardest for people around the world, right? You're exactly right, Brennan. You'd think they would let people get back on their feet, get a breath, recover, and they're like, well, look, let's talk about climate change because we find this very important. That's another indication that climate change is a hoax, right? Because they're going to use the opportunity when people are on the defensive, when people are on their back heels and sucking wind, right? Nope, you have to do this, you have to do that. That's what they're doing. They're going after people when they're weak. It's important to look at these things as political campaigns, right? These are not environmental initiatives. These are political campaigns.
These situations like the Jan 6 committee, and you've described what you see as a kind of disdain for the American people, for the average person coming from the higher-ups, the ruling elites. I see it's kind of a parallel here, and just in the way that you're seeing these, for example, these farmers being treated in the Netherlands. I'll just read this quote that's come from the government. They've said whether and how they can continue with their business, these farmers, the minister sees three options for them. They can become more sustainable, they can relocate, or they can stop. And it's kind of like they can stop, like they're doing something bad, right? You know, it's like they need to be pulled into line because this is a immoral action, what their harm they're rendering against the environment. I think it speaks of a psychology that we're not expecting, you know, that people would actually think this way, that they have these people who are making these judgments, who are kind of delivering these policies or controlling them overall. They don't think the way we'd expect. They really have this idea of entitlement and that they're the best positioned to call the shots. And the idea of democracy is an obstruction to them.
Exactly. You would think that the leaders of a Western democracy would say, look, you farmers, the ag sector is so important. Without the agricultural sector, I mean, we can't live. What you've done for the Dutch nation, we revere you, right? Or same with Sri Lanka. You'd say, you are so important, the rice that you produce. With the Dutch, the vegetables, the fruits, the beef that you produce is so important. This is one of the things that makes us known around the world, right? The Netherlands, as a lot of people are finding out now, they didn't know before, but Netherlands is the #2 exporter of food in the world behind the United States. So this should be a point of pride. And Dutch officials would say, farmers, we have to work together. We're going to figure this out and we're going to solve this problem like this. But you're exactly right. What do they do instead? It's immediately set up as opposition. We're going to destroy you if you don't do what we say. Either you will follow these regulations to a T, or you'll have to stop, or you can leave. You can go somewhere else.